everybody, welcome to the GMG review. Today we're taking a look at Night Thirst, a battle royale miniature game about vampires and blood-sucking by WittleGoblin. This was published by Blacksite Studios and was kindly sent along as a complimentary review copy for me to check out and for you guys to hear about. This is a about 102-page soft cover but full color game, a standalone game from Blacksite Studio, and is a battle royale in a world of darkness. In a vampires live in our society. They are known about by our government and are allowed through sort of like treaties and negotiation to occasionally have what they call the Night Thirst, which is a massive feeding contest where vampires basically get to take like, you know, almost like a reality TV show blood hunt of who can take down the most people. You get to pick your vampire. It is a multiplayer game. Your vampires will all have sort of a trope that they follow, like a bestial vampire, a sexy vampire, a modern day vampire, an ancient one, like stuff like that, that you will sort of like derive your different powers from and stuff like that. And you'll play on whatever kind of modern size table you want. 3x3 is the standard sort of like recommended size. And of course, it works perfectly with all the various Blacksite Studios terrain kits. I don't know who else has these cars in that ambulance, but I certainly do. It uses D20s. A variety of tokens are provided in the back of the book for you to photocopy. This would work perfectly with, what are they called? The gel cap stickers. So when you want to like make these with a 1-inch hole punch, you can use bottle cap stickers to cover these up and make them permanent. And then of course you get little blood tokens too. But you can also get these from Blacksite Studio as well as the cards as a separate buy. You get your vampire cards and tokens. You need some miniatures, 28mm vampire miniatures. You also want prey and stake agents. Prey comes in various forms, you know, from like regular sort of like Joe Schmoes on the street working to stake agents who are exactly what it sounds like. They're agents of the government that work for Stake, a secret organization that kind of, I guess, like polices vampire activities and will try to keep the vampire plague from spreading. All right, so basic overview of the game is what we'll dive into, and then I'll give my thoughts and comments on it. The sort of like core format is going to be choosing a scenario and then setting up the terrain and light sources. Light plays a big part in this for the line of sight of the victims. So your vampire obviously can see in the dark, can see everything. It's more what is the reactive state of the models on the table. They're going to be dictated by the light that they're in. Place prey according to the scenario chosen. Choose vampires and determine which vampire will go first. Place your vampires and then start playing the game. So as I said previously, you're going to get sort of like a dictated set of these from your scenario that you select to play, but we have civilians, hard guns, and workers, who are the various things that you can be hunting. Each one has 3 different stats: blood, bravery, bold, and value. So blood is when you feed on them, how much blood you get at each one. Bravery is like the stat for when they are going to be terrified and stuff like that. They have to basically make tests. They can become nervous or terrified, and they act differently depending on the current state that they're in, or normal, just unaware the vampire's around. And then you've got your bold, and your value. Bold is sort of like your skill to fight back with, and your value is how many damage points you can take. It's kind of like your life bar, and you subtract from it every time you have blood fed from you. So for instance, civilians are 3 blood, 3 bravery, 3 bold, and 6 value. Hired guns are 4, 4, 4, and 8. Workers are 2, 2, 2, and 4, so basically you're always going to be double your value in what you can be fed on. And then stake agents are 5, 5, 5, and 10, and are fairly tough, robust baddies. So when you choose a vampire, you're going to have a variety of different ones you can choose from. Their stat line is going to consist of vitality, grace, dread, and power. So your vitality is your health bar, like it's how much damage you can take. If it's reduced to 0, you're incapacitated and you're gone. Your dread is going to be how scary and intense you are. It can also be things like your hypnotic ability. Grace is how fast you move. Power is your combat stat. These are all basically added D20 rolls typically, or are just like a flat stat like your movement value or your damage. When you play the game, you're going to have your, and the core game itself typically works on a test system using a D20 and using your stat as a modifier. There's the card all laid out. Vampire type, so what kind you are, your stats, right? So your dread, grace, power, and vitality. You have specials that unlock, and you have preference for your type of prey that you like. So for instance, the partier, Woody herself, has dread 4, grace 6, power 5, and vitality 10. Select a special ability to unlock once you've acquired 6 blood tokens, and then unlock the remaining at 8. So each of these will come out. One of the two will unlock first, and the other one unlocks as soon as you've fed 8 points of blood. Your preference is civilian prey. When feeding on civilian prey, roll a d20. If the result is an even number, you gain an additional blood token. On an odd number, this has no impact on your feeding. Basically, you enjoy feeding on one of them more, and they get fed slightly faster. Her two abilities are Last Call. The partier is draining prey of all the remaining blood. When they are draining prey of all the remaining blood, they can roll a d20. If the player rolls a 10 or above, the vampire receives an extra blood token. If the player rolls less than 10, then has no impact on their feeding. And then Good Time. The partier can attempt to calm a nervous civilian worker or player with line of sight and tell them to have a good time. Perform a grace check, target number 5 plus the bold stat of the model. So basically you would roll a d20 with a target number of 5. Let's say it was a civilian, it would be 3, so 8, and then you'd add your grace. So you'd add so it was a grace check? Yeah, grace check. You'd add 6 to the roll. On a success, the prey will use their movement value to go directly towards the partier. This does not take place of their movement, like their normal movement in the prey phase. On a failure, they ignore the partier and they move 3 inches directly away. So basically you can try and seduce someone to come towards you if you get that power off. And by the time you've fed for 8 tokens, then you get both unlocked. So the core thing is the vampire phase. The vampires take their activations. Then the prey phase, the prey will act according to their AI and their current state if they are nervous or terrified. Then the blood phase, any stuff that happens. And then the stakes phase. The stakes phases, players will reference the solar chart to see the passage of time, because you have to basically get everything done before the sun comes up. And during the blood phase, players will check to see if one of them's collected enough blood tokens to win the game. If you have 20 tokens, the game continues. So if no one has 20 tokens, the game continues. This is a good time for players to look and make sure that they haven't missed unlocking any special abilities. And ending the game, when the 6 round's complete, the sun's risen, the game's over, players will tally their blood tokens and declare a winner, unless somebody's hit 20 already, in which case they are the winner. And that's kind of it. You can get a advantage disadvantage, which is typically to roll pick the highest. So for dread checks, roll a d20 and add the dread stat of the vampire making the check. If it totals or equals the target number, it's passed. For grace checks, same thing. Power checks, same thing. Typically they're opposed. And then for vitality checks, roll a d20. If the roll is equal to or under the current vitality of the vampire, the check is passed. So that's the only time you want to roll under is for your vitality check. It's basically under your health. And then prey checks. At many times during the game, players will have to make checks for prey to see if they'll rise to the occasion, freeze in place, or run for it. Because no player has direct control of them, any player can check on behalf of the prey to see what happens. All checks will usually have a target number, and then that target number will be usually a d20 plus a stat. And then you got bloodlust. When you're activating a vampire, the first thing you must do is check to see if they've gone crazy with bloodlust. If the activating vampire is within 12 of any unclaimed blood tokens on the table, you must make a bloodlust check to see if they resist moving towards them. The challenge test is a target number 15, and then success. If the total of 1 die roll equals or exceeds the difficulty of the bloodlust check, the check succeeds and the vampire is not affected. In failure, if the check has failed, the vampire sends exempt to bloodlust, and the activation just smells too good. And if a vampire has bloodlust, the activating vampire must use their entire activation to move towards the target group, largest group of blood tokens within 12. Vampires that come into contact with blood tokens as a result of bloodlust automatically collect their blood tokens and end the activation. So blood tokens can land on the ground when you damage somebody in melee without doing a feed check. Feed, you just get them automatically. If you hit somebody, they just drop blood. And then actions. So during your turn, you're going to have a variety of different actions you can do. Typically, you perform 3 simple actions or a simple action and a challenging action, and everybody always gets 1 effortless action. So it's a little bit like Malifaux in that your your difficulty will be, there's a scale kind of for standard difficulty. So an effortless action just automatically succeeds, difficulty 0. A simple is a 10. Sometimes it'll add a stat. It depends on what the action is. If it's just interacting with an object and it's a simple action, it'll be a 10 plus your stat. If it's a challenging action, it's a 15. So moving dynamically, feeding, resting up, or resisting being fed upon by another vampire. So effortless things like dropping a body, moving, unlocking one of your special abilities. Simple actions, attacking, vampires on prey. Attacking, vampires on vampires. Getting into a disguise, get a disguise token. So drinking, if you're already feeding on someone and they're locked onto you, you can keep feeding on them. Dropping a body, haste. Discreetly, if you can drop a body and hide it within 6 as opposed to just put it right on the ground. Haste, the vampire moves unaffected by area terrain. Move the vampire up to their grace stat horizontally. On a failure, move half your vampire's grace rounded up, which is like a dash, and then hide, pick up, and steady. So a lot of times you're going to use your effortless action to just move normally. Move your grace. And if you want to move again as an action, you got to make a stat check, and if you pass on a 10, then you will move your full stat, otherwise you move half your stat. Pick up and steady, lose the stunned action. You can also hide. And then challenging things like a dynamic moves, like climbing up stuff, levitating, going up a wall or a fence. Feeding vampires on humans, feeding vampires on vampires, which is a little bit more dangerous. And then resisting being fed upon if you're already being fed upon by a vampire. And then your movement, normal movement, haste, and dynamic, which we already described. They're all going to make checks based upon their difficulty rating. And then line of sight. So civilian prey are equipped with flashlights on their cell phones. They can see 6 inches. Worker prey can see 9 because they have like utility flashlights. Hired guns or professional security, or they can see 12. And then stake agents have high-tech proprietary equipment and night vision scopes. They can see any amount of distance, and only certain kinds of terrain will block it. And then light and light sources. Night thirst always takes place at night. Some scenarios put light sources on the board. Light is a 6-inch effect measured in a 3-inch radius. So if you come within 3 of a light source, they'll be able to see you, regardless of what kind of like stuff they have. So you have to kind of navigate around the light sources. Rules for terrain, and obviously the examples here are all black site terrain. Crit success and crit failures will all be based upon what you're doing. So newly turns, nobles, partiers, prowlers in the order, and the Ancient One and Thralls. The Ancient One, they all have their own table for what kind of cool things happens if they critically succeed or critically fail. So if like a noble critically dynamic moves, the power you feel rising into the air above these simple humans never gets old to you. After your movement, you can move an additional 3 inches. So you get like cool kind of Easter eggs. I really like this because I've never seen this particular format for crits before. It's kind of like having an end of turn event thing, but it happens in your actions. So baked into every single action for every single character type is special events and occurrences that can happen if you roll that 20. That's really cool. And you can have critical failures too. Like if a newly turned critically fails feeding, you find yourself automatically deferring to the other vampire. You don't feel strong enough to bite them. Your target can immediately take a bonus effortless action. Like just little narrative things like that that happen and that are based upon who you are inside the universe is a really clever little bit of game design. I would love to see more stuff like this in games. Obviously, something at this like crunch level and detail level only really works in like a 5 to 10 miniature game. Like you couldn't bring this into a mass combat game, but for this type of game in particular, I think this is probably the most clever piece of game design in the entire book. And Witty should be justifiably proud of this little addition because instead of having it happen on a schedule, they pop up randomly inside the game. And they're fun and surprising and make it feel like vampires are doing vampire things in a vampire fight. That's probably, like the rest of it's mechanically great and sound, but that's probably the most innovative piece of game design in the book, and I really like it. Feeding, drinking blood, yeah. And then what the prey do. So prey reactions, they might scream, try and get help, attack, like your different like simple actions they can do. And each of them has, based upon their class, different things. There's Malev as a miniature, which I think is awesome. He's even in here. Codename Campion. Yeah, I like that. And then stake agent actions can do all kinds of cool things to try and subdue the vampires and their prey because you're afraid they're going to get contaminated. Rules for the different conditions you can have, how they activate based on their states. So terrified prey in free state, nervous prey in free state, and then calm prey in free state, what they'll do. And then stake agents in free state because they just do stuff all the time. And then meet the vampires. We have the Ancient One. We have the Thrall, so the Ancient One comes with an extra guy, the Thrall. You get the newly turned, the party vampire. Sorry, the newly turned, the Noble. Then the Order, which is like a knightly order of vampires. The Partier. And the Prowler, and the Prowler's like the bestial vampire who's just like totally turned to the dark side. Different scenarios, so there's a core scenario, scenario 101, it's just like the free play one, but then we've got Bar Crawl, the Industrial Plant, Stargazing at the Park, the Carnival, and the local show. All of these feel like they're ripped straight out of the Lost Boys, and I love that. It's basically what kind of distraction are the humans undergoing while the vampires, come along and start feeding on them. And then finally, we have the advanced rules and reference, and this is just like your cheat sheets for additional ways to play the game. Advanced rules are just like different play modes, like Feast, double the amount of guys on the table. Famine, half the amount of people on the table. And then, oops, everyone's a stake agent, it was a trap. And we got our reference cards. And that's it. So, Night Thirst, a battle royale miniature game of vampires and bloodsucking. This is, again, it's not a huge game. It's a party game. It's like an activity game. It's a game you would play like at a get together with a bunch of people that you've been planning for a little while, where you want some light wargaming activity to do. This is a perfect like multiplayer sort of like arena game. It would be like pulling out Mario Kart for miniature wargamers, for goth miniature wargamers. I would put on some Joy Division and or maybe some New Order and you know, like get your sunglasses on at night and put Blade 1 on in the background and hang out and play this game. I think as a great example of social gaming. It's not designed to be like super competitive. It's not designed to be super airtight. It's designed to be narratively thrilling and to make you feel like vampires are having a vampire party. So very well done for the theme. I think that the design in it is really just sort of like simple and elegant. You could probably teach this to somebody with 4 stats relatively quickly, and knowing that like the basic checks are always going to be the same, right? Effortless, simple, and complex. And because all the reference material is easy to photocopy and just have around, or you can just buy the card ones from Blacksite Studios, it's pretty accessible to get playing too. So there it is, The Night Thirst. I highly recommend this for a goth industrial night party game for you and your wargaming friends. And you can check it out in the links below from Blacksite Studio. Big thanks for WittleGoblin and Blacksite sending this along. If you guys were watching, thanks now, Mash. Have a great week.